First antagonist, Bill Williamson, the loyal idiot who mistook purpose for salvation.
Ooh, the scary fella all covered in blood.
Bill Williamson is one of those guys where the more you learn about him, the less funny he becomes, and then somehow, tragically, funny again. He's an ex-army soldier, dishonorably discharged, deeply insecure, aggressively loyal, and powered almost entirely by bad decisions and whiskey. A lot of whiskey. Born Marion Williamson, which, yeah, explains a lot. Bill spends his entire life running from embarrassment. His father drank himself into madness by mixing whiskey with moonshine like it was a science experiment, and Bill grows up terrified he'll end up the same way. And he does, just with guns. Bill tries reform school, fails. Tries the army, fails spectacularly. He fights Native Americans, comes back with trauma and racism instead of therapy, and gets kicked out for deviancy and attempted murder. That's not oops, I messed up dishonorable discharge. That's kind of please never wear a uniform again dishonorable discharge. Then comes the moment that defines his entire existence. He tries to rob Dutch and Hosea. They laugh at him. They already stole his ammo. And instead of killing him, Dutch does the worst thing possible. He gives Bill purpose. And Bill clings to that like it's the last bottle on Earth. From that moment on, Bill becomes the Vander Linde gang's blunt instrument. He's hot-headed, not especially bright, but tough, reliable in a fight, and absolutely ride or die for Dutch. Explosives? Bill. Need muscle? Bill. Need someone to argue with Tilly and then ruin stealth immediately? Definitely Bill. And to be fair, he tries. He plans robberies, he fights Pinkertons, he defends Arthur when Micah crosses a line. He even shows empathy sometimes, which feels illegal for him. But Bill's fatal flaw is fear. Not fear of death, fear of being alone again. So when Dutch starts unraveling, Bill doesn't question it. He doubles down. Loyalty over logic. Belonging over truth. By the end of Red Dead Redemption 2, Bill sides against Arthur and John. Not because he hates them, but because choosing them would mean admitting Dutch failed him, and Bill can't survive that. By 1911, he's exactly what he always feared becoming. A violent drunk, leading his own gang out of Fort Mercer, clinging to power, lashing out at anyone who reminds him of a better life he couldn't hold on to. When John comes for him, Bill doesn't see an old friend. He sees proof that redemption was possible, and that makes him angry enough to pull the trigger. Loyalty, fear, and a purpose that poisoned him slowly. Bill Williamson didn't fall from grace. He never knew how to stand on it. Second antagonist, Norman Deek, the right-hand man who lasted exactly one bad decision too long.
Besides, Norm here is going to be my shield, ain't you?
Norman Deek is what happens when you stand too close to Bill Williamson for too long and start thinking, yeah, I could do this too. He's Bill's second in command, Fort Mercer's loudest enforcer, and a man whose entire career arc can be summarized as promising menace and catastrophic timing. Born in 1877, Deek is younger than Bill, meaner in presentation, and absolutely desperate to look important. He's not the brains of the operation because Fort Mercer doesn't have brains, but he is the guy Bill trusts to stand beside him with a rifle and yell threats across a canyon like it's a team. Building exercise. When John Marston and Marshall Lee Johnson first confront Fort Mercer, Deek is right there on the escarpment, gun leveled, chest puffed out, acting like this is his villain debut. And to his credit, he commits. He leads the assault. He shoots first. He swears a lot, like Rockstar let him say a lot of bad words more than once, which immediately tells you he's not surviving long term. But then reality kicks in. Deek gets wounded, captured, and dragged back to Armadillo in cuffs. And suddenly this loud, aggressive outlaw becomes something far more dangerous to his own gang. Leverage. Marshall Johnson plans to interrogate him, squeeze him, maybe turn him into a living map of Fort Mercer. And the Williamson gang responds in the most unhinged way possible by kidnapping Bonnie McFarlane and threatening rape and murder like it's a negotiating tactic. Subtlety was not invited to this meeting. The exchange at Tumbleweed is where Norman Deek's story ends, and it ends brutally. Johnson brings Deek out, restrained. Bonnie's supposed to be released. And instead, Deek's own gang opens fire and kills him on the spot. No rescue, no hesitation, no loyalty speech, just bang, problem solved. And that's the thing about Deek. He wasn't killed by John. He wasn't killed by the law. He was killed by the exact outlaw logic he lived by. He existed to be useful. The second he stopped being useful, Fort Mercer erased him. His death barely ripples the story. It gets a note in the Blackwater Ledger, and that's it. No revenge arc, no justice. Just another name crossed out by a gang that learned loyalty from Bill Williamson. Power borrowed, loyalty conditional, and a hat that mysteriously respawned after death. Norman Deek didn't fall in battle. He was traded in and written off. Third antagonist, Agustín Allende, the revolutionary who rotted from the inside out.
Estarás aplaudiendo cuando mi cabeza está en pedo.
Agustín Allende is the kind of villain who didn't start evil, which somehow makes him worse. Once upon a time, apparently, Allende was an idealist, a poor kid who climbed the ranks, believed in change, maybe even flirted with radical politics. The type who probably said things like, "The people deserve better," and meant it. Then power happened, and power did what it always does when someone decides they deserve it more than everyone else. By 1911, Allende is a colonel, a provincial governor, and an absolute monster wrapped in a black military uniform that screams, "I am overdressed for a massacre." He runs Nuevo Paraíso like a personal playground. Land seizures, forced labor, executions, torture, abuse. If it's cruel and efficient, Allende's already put his name on it. And the dangerous thing? He used to be poor, which means he knows exactly what he's doing. Allende lives above Escalera in a fortified mansion, literally watching the city from on high like a bored god. He doesn't just rule through fear, he enjoys it. He treats suffering like a hobby, something to pass the time between drinks and medals. His army doesn't serve the people, it serves his ego. When John Marston arrives in Mexico, Allende sees an opportunity, not to help, not to negotiate, to use. He dangles Bill Williamson and Javier Escuella like bait, promises delivery, and sends John off on a greatest hits tour of war crimes. Kill rebels, burn villages, capture women, smile for the uniformed psychopath supervising it all. And when John finally comes to collect, Allende betrays him without blinking, because that's who he is. Loyalty means nothing. Ideals mean nothing. Survival means everything. Now his downfall is also poetic in the ugliest way. When the rebels storm his villa, Allende doesn't go down fighting. He doesn't stand for his beliefs because he doesn't have any left. Instead, he grabs Bill Williamson, shoves him into the dirt, and tries to barter a human life for an escape route. Take him. He's what you want. That's Allende in one moment. A man who rose from nothing, crushed everyone beneath him, and died begging while standing on someone else's back. You can kill him yourself, or you can hesitate and let Reyes do it. Either way, Allende doesn't get a martyr's death. He gets exactly what he earned. Power, cruelty, and ideals sold piece by piece. Agustín Allende didn't lose the revolution. He betrayed it long before it reached him. Fourth antagonist, Vincente de Santa, the bootlicker who thought cruelty was a personality.
On here. Have you heard? There's a war going on.
Vincente de Santa is the kind of guy who hears power corrupts and responds with, "Okay, but what if I speedrun it?" He's Allende's man on the ground, the captain who does all the dirty work so his boss can sip wine on a balcony and pretend he's a statesman. Born into a family of soldiers, de Santa never really had a choice. Uniform, discipline, beatings, and expectations. His childhood sounds less like a home and more like a military tutorial level you can't skip. His father beats him, calls him weak, calls him a girl, and somehow de Santa grows up thinking, yeah, this seems like a healthy foundation. By 1911, he's a captain in the Mexican army, which in Nuevo Paraíso basically means authority, zero accountability, as well as unlimited war crimes. And de Santa thrives. When John Marston shows up, de Santa plays buddy-buddy, smiles, jokes, that fake friendliness that immediately tells you this man is about to ruin someone's life. Then the missions start. Burn villages, execute civilians, kidnap women for the colonel. Every task feels like Rockstar asking, "Hey John, how uncomfortable do you want to be today?" De Santa tries to kill John repeatedly, but never directly. He sends him on suicide missions with incompetent soldiers, hoping nature, bullets, or sheer bad luck will do the job. Peak coward energy. This is a man who will absolutely stab you, just not where witnesses exist. Then comes the church betrayal. Bill and Javier are inside. They are not. Instead, John gets knocked out, tied up, and lined up for execution like it's open mic night for firing squads. De Santa finally thinks he's won, until Reyes interrupts and everything goes to hell. Again. When De Santa finally gets caught, the mask comes off completely. No bravado, no speeches, just a sad, panicking bully getting beaten by the people he terrorized. He lies one last time, sending John into an ambush because, even broken and bleeding, he needs to feel important. You can kill him yourself, or you can walk away and let the rebels finish it. Either way, nobody mourns him. Cruelty, cowardice, and career bootlicking. Vincente de Santa didn't die for his country. He died because he thought being feared was the same thing as being strong. Fifth antagonist, Captain Espinoza, the true believer who set everything on fire and called it patriotism.
De Santa, ¿por qué tardaste tanto? ¿Y quién es este gringo?
Captain Espinoza is the scariest kind of villain in Red Dead Redemption, not because he's clever or charismatic or secretly pulling strings, but because he genuinely believes he's the good guy. Espinoza is a captain in the Mexican army under Allende, and unlike de Santa, who's basically a cowardly office snake in a fancy uniform, Espinoza is frontline, boots dirty, rifle up brutal. This man doesn't outsource violence. He shows up personally, eye patch on, mustache locked in, ready to commit atrocities with confidence. The first time you really get a feel for him is at Tesoro Azul. Rebels are hiding out, John helps clear them, and once it's done, Espinoza suggests fire bottles, not as a last resort, not reluctantly, just like, yeah, let's burn their homes too, for Mexico, and the game lets you do it. Controller in hand, moral discomfort fully engaged. That's Espinoza's whole thing. He doesn't hesitate, he doesn't flinch. He executes surrendered rebels personally because in his mind, mercy is just inefficiency wearing a smile. What makes him weirdly compelling is his rivalry with Vincente de Santa. Same rank, same boss, absolute hatred. De Santa calls Espinoza a dumb ape. Espinoza calls De Santa a useless maid Allende can't sleep with. These two despise each other so much that at one point they casually discuss which one of them should kill De Santa, like it's a side objective. But yeah, Espinoza is actually brave, like uncomfortably so. He fights on the front lines, he leads charges, he mans trains under fire. When things go bad, he doesn't vanish into a balcony or hide behind soldiers. Even John notices it. There's a strange mutual respect between them, the kind two professional gunmen have when they recognize competence, even if they hate everything else about each other. But Espinoza is still a monster. He burns villages, he executes prisoners, he threatens John repeatedly, and when John finally turns against the army and chaos erupts in Chuparosa, Espinoza doesn't run. De Santa does. Espinoza stays. Their final confrontation ends in Alcalde's house. Bullets flying, bodies everywhere. Espinoza fights to the bitter end and dies standing, convinced he was saving his country. Which is the tragedy of him? Loyalty, conviction, and absolutely zero self-reflection. Captain Espinoza didn't question the war. He just made sure it burned hotter. Sixth antagonist, Javier Escuella, the romantic revolutionary who followed the wrong poem. Javier Escuella is tragic in that very Red Dead way where you don't notice it at first, because he's busy playing guitar, dressing better than everyone else, and generally acting like the coolest guy at camp. And honestly, for a long time he kind of is. Javier grows up in Nuevo Paraíso watching the system chew people alive. His uncle gets castrated and fed to pigs for suggesting fair wages. Just a normal childhood memory that definitely won't shape your entire worldview forever. His mother tells him to accept peasant life. Javier does not. So he becomes a revolutionary, a bounty hunter, a man with ideals and a gun, and absolutely no chill. When he flees to America, starving and unable to speak English, fate does the funniest thing possible. It has him meet Dutch van der Linde, while both of them are stealing chickens. Dutch feeds him, clothes him, gives him a cause, and just like that, Javier latches on. Not to the gang, to the idea of the gang, to Dutch as a symbol. That's the key to Javier. He's loyal, but not to people. He's loyal to meaning. In RDR2, Javier is still mostly good vibes. He helps rescue John in a blizzard. He rides with Arthur. He refuses to rob a stagecoach full of women and kids. He sings, jokes. He feels like someone who might actually make it out if the universe were kinder. But the cracks show. Blackwater happens. Dutch kills Heidi McCourt, and Javier stays. As Dutch spirals, Javier doesn't question it. He reinterprets it. He gets colder, sharper, suspicious of Arthur and John. By Beaver Hollow, he's defending Dutch out of habit more than belief, and during the final standoff, he's the only one who can't bring himself to aim directly at his old brothers. Gun raised, eyes conflicted, soul already tired. By 1911, the tragedy is complete. Javier is back in Mexico working for Colonel Allende. Yes, that Allende. The exact kind of tyrant Javier once fought against. The revolutionary is now a hired gun for a dictator, and everyone knows it. Prostitutes won't even insult him properly. Rebels whisper his name like it's bad luck. When John finally corners him at El Quibai, Presidio, Javier laughs, tries to charm his way out, lies about Dutch, lies about Bill, then shoves a crate at John and bolts like it's reflex. If you kill him, John spits on his body, with tears in his eyes. If you spare him, the government finishes the job later anyway. Songs, ideals, and loyalty stretched until it snapped. Javier Escuella didn't betray the revolution. He just followed the wrong man until there was nowhere left to stand. Seventh antagonist, Edgar Ross, the government's smuggest side quest.
Lynn's most trusted associate. You've read the files. Typical.
Edgar Ross is the kind of villain who doesn't twirl a mustache because he is the mustache. He's not an outlaw. He's not a gang leader. He's not even some grand final boss gunslinger. He's bureaucracy with a revolver, a walking federal form you can't stop signing. Ross is born in 1861, goes to fancy schools, does the whole educated lawman pipeline, and ends up in the Pinkertons because of course he does. And in RDR2, he's Milton's junior partner, the little assistant manager of misery who follows you around like a receipt you can't throw away. The first time he shows up properly, Arthur's out fishing with little Jack. Peaceful moment, birds chirping, vibes immaculate. And then here comes Milton and Ross like, hello, yes, we're here to ruin your childhood memory. Milton tries the turn, Dutch and deal. Arthur tells them to eat dirt, and Ross, being the petty goblin he is, mockingly tells a 4-year-old Jack to enjoy fishing while he still can. Bro, he's 4. That's not law enforcement, that's hater behavior. Ross stays in the background through RDR2, but you can feel him leveling up. He's there when Hosea gets executed. He's there when Cornwall is pressuring Milton, and when Milton dies, Ross doesn't get sad, he gets promoted. Suddenly he's yelling orders at Beaver Hollow like he's the new raid leader, and everyone better follow mechanics. Then the epilogue hits. 19-0. Ross and Fordham find Micah's corpse and basically go, interesting, time to ruin John Marston's life again. They track him down at Beecher's Hope, watch him teaching Jack how to groom a horse, this soft, rare moment of peace, and they just stand there like vultures taking notes. By 1911 in Red Dead Redemption, Ross finally becomes what he always wanted to be, a government man with unlimited authority and zero soul. He kidnaps John's family and turns the whole game into an extortion quest. Go kill your former brothers or your wife and kid don't come back. Classic Ross, always talking about civilization while acting like a bandit with paperwork. Even when John succeeds, Bill, Javier, Dutch, all handled, Ross still isn't satisfied. He shoots Dutch's dead body because it looks better in the report. That line alone tells you everything. Ross doesn't care about justice, he cares about the story he gets to tell afterward. And the ultimate Ross move, like he breaks the deal. He brings the army to Beecher's Hope, guns John down in front of his home, lights a cigar like he just completed 100% story completion, and rides away leaving the mess behind. But Red Dead doesn't let that stand. In 1914, Jack finds him, retired, metal-heavy, duck hunting, living the soft life he stole from someone else. Ross still has the audacity to blame John for his own death, threaten Jack, act like he's untouchable, and then the duel happens. Civilization, cruelty, and the smuggest mustache in the West, Edgar Ross didn't enforce the law. He used it like a weapon, until someone finally aimed back. 8th antagonist, Archer Fordham, the junior Fed who almost grew a conscience. Almost. Archer Fordham is what happens when the government hires a young guy who actually believes the brochure. He's ambitious, sharp-eyed, physically capable, and just naive enough to think he's one promotion away from being the good guy in this story. Fordham joins the Bureau of Investigation in 1907, right when it's brand new and still pretending it's not just Pinkertons with better branding. Edgar Ross scoops him up immediately, because of course he does. Every soulless bureaucratic villain needs a protege who still has hope they can slowly crush. We first really clock Fordham in RDR2, standing next to Ross on Mount Hagen, staring at Micah Bell's corpse like two men who just found a plot coupon. They trail clues, spy on John Marston teaching Jack how to brush a horse, another peaceful moment ruined by federal surveillance, and silently agree, yep, that's our guy. No warrant, no proof, just vibes and authority. By 1911, Fordham is Ross's right-hand man, and together they pull their signature move, kidnapping John's wife and kid and calling it law enforcement. Fordham doesn't question it. He escorts John to the train station like this is all very official and very necessary. He's aggressive, direct, and far less subtle than Ross, more kick the door down than smile while stabbing. What makes Fordham interesting, though, is that he's not fully hollowed out yet. In Nuevo Paraíso, he actually reacts to John's choices. Bring Javier in alive? Fordham approves. Kill him? Fordham gets annoyed. Which is wild because he still absolutely helped kidnap your family. But hey, standards. As the hunt for Dutch ramps up, Fordham fights alongside John. Shoots well, holds his ground, does the job. And when Dutch finally throws himself off that cliff, Fordham thanks John. Genuinely. Tells him he's made his country proud. For a brief moment, it feels like maybe, just maybe, this nightmare is over. And then Beecher's Hope happens. Fordham shows up with Ross and the army to execute John anyway. No hesitation, no protest. He lines up with the firing squad and proves that when it comes down to it, loyalty to the badge beats respect every time. Depending on the player, Fordham might die there, or he might live long enough to realize what he's become. That's Fordham's tragedy. He wasn't born a monster, he was trained into one. Ambition, obedience, and a conscience that never quite fired. Archer Fordham didn't stop the machine. He just learned how to march in step. 9th antagonist, Leviticus Cornwall, the robber baron who thought money made him bulletproof.
No, I have heard it before. And get that army man to pay his portage charge.
Leviticus Cornwall isn't an outlaw. He doesn't ride with a gang. He doesn't get his boots dirty. He's worse. Cornwall is capitalism with a face, a beard, and a train schedule. The kind of man who doesn't pull the trigger himself, himself, but signs the paper that decides who gets shot and why. He owns railways, mines, oil companies, freight yards, basically every logo you keep accidentally robbing in RDR2. And every time you do, Cornwall takes it very personally. The train robbery near Coulter, that's the moment you unknowingly aggro the game's richest NPC. Hosea says it's a bad idea. Dutch ignores him. Cornwall notices. And from that point on, Cornwall turns his infinite money into infinite Pinkertons, personally funding the Van der Linde gang's worst nightmare like it's a subscription service. And Cornwall doesn't just hate outlaws, he hates inefficiency. Workers strike, he threatens them. Miners die, production must continue. The Wapiti live on land he might be able to drill someday? Cool, let's sponsor a small ethnic cleansing just in case there's oil. He bankrolls Colonel Favors, undermines the federal government, and still calls himself a respectable businessman. Absolute menace behavior. What makes Cornwall fascinating is that he genuinely believes he's better than Dutch. Dutch robs banks. Cornwall robs entire regions. Dutch even calls him out on it. You kill, you rob, I rob. The difference is scale. Cornwall destroys communities and then checks his pocket watch while it happens. His death scene is pure irony. Dutch decides to confront him socially, demands 10 grand, a boat, and safe passage. Basically tries to mug late-stage capitalism itself. Cornwall refuses because of course he does. He's never said yes to anyone without a contract. So Dutch shoots him. And Cornwall, this untouchable titan of industry, falls into the water like a sack of very expensive potatoes. And it changes nothing. The Pinkertons don't stop. The Wapiti still lose their land. Oil drilling still happens, and turns out there wasn't even that much oil. Cornwall's companies keep running without him. The man dies, but the machine keeps going. Newspapers call his death unthinkable. NPCs gossip about it like they saw a god bleed. And yet, Cornwall gets exactly what every robber baron fears most: irrelevance. Money, modernity, and blood on clean hands. Leviticus Cornwall didn't lose because he was weak. He lost because he finally stood close enough to be shot. 10th antagonist, Angelo Bronte, the city boss who forgot the swamp bites back.
Excuse me. I said, why?
Angelo Bronte is what happens when the old world, mafia energy collides headfirst with the American South and decides it owns the place. He's not loud like Dutch. He's not messy like the Braithwaites. He's smooth, smug, and absolutely convinced Saint Denis is his city, because in most ways that matter, it kind of is. Bronte runs Saint Denis from behind silk curtains and expensive parties. Politicians know him, cops owe him favors. The mayor answers his phone calls. He doesn't need to rob banks, he just adjusts paperwork, and suddenly the money walks toward him. Classic lizard in a suit behavior, as Arthur so eloquently puts it. His introduction is brutal in the quietest way possible. Catherine Braithwaite sells Jack Marston to him like a sack of stolen moonshine, and Bronte treats the kidnapping like a business transaction that already wrapped up. But the twist is that Bronte is nice to Jack. Toys, baths, spaghetti. The kid comes back calling him Papa Bronte, which is maybe the most cursed sentence in the entire game. When Dutch finally meets Bronte, the tension is immediate. Two men who both think they're smarter than the world, staring each other down. Bronte flatters Dutch, mocks him, and tests him. He gives the gang work. He invites them to high society parties. He pretends they're equals, all while quietly planning their humiliation. And the trolley station tip? Absolute setup. Barely any money. Police everywhere. Bronte doesn't just betray Dutch, he embarrasses him. And if there's one thing Dutch cannot survive, it's being laughed at by someone in a nicer suit. Dutch decides Bronte has to die. What follows is one of the most chilling moments in RDR2. Bronte's mansion gets hit, his men fall. When Arthur and John find him, his gun jams, because of course it does, and suddenly the great crime lord is throwing his pistol and begging like a man who's never been powerless before. But Dutch doesn't shoot him. He drowns him, slowly, in the swamp, while Bronte insults him until the very end. Then Dutch feeds his body to an alligator like he's making a statement to the universe. And that's the moment the gang realizes something's wrong. Bronte wasn't just an antagonist, he was a mirror. A man who proved that power, control, and civilization look just as monstrous as outlaw chaos when you peel the polish away. Silk suits, spaghetti, and a swamp full of consequences. Angelo Bronte didn't lose Saint Denis. He lost the moment he thought he was untouchable.